All right, let's do this one last time.
The lone and level sands stretch far away.
This is the largest land I've ever seen in my life.
And yet danger lurks around every corner. Watch your step. If you trip, you might find yourself caught in the arms of death. All right, I've entered the scant coordinates of Altus Lavoir. Let's go.
I know, this review has been pretty late and I apologize. Life just gets in the way, but not as much as this game's outrageous, jiggle mechanics. What can I say about Stellar Blade that you already haven't heard before? Is this the best first-party game that Sony has released thus far? No, but that doesn't mean the game is bad in any way, unlike Rise of the Ronin. Now, I'll admit there were some disappointments in this game for me, but none that would cause me to sway you into not buying this game. And no, it is not the jiggle mechanics that's been keeping me hooked on this game. But if I'm being honest here... Let's talk about the story. You do play as an android named Eve, a member of the Airborne Squad, whose mission is to save what's left of humanity from the threat known as the Naytibas, a race of creatures believed to be an alien invading threat on Earth that is basically massacring the human race. And during your journey, you will meet some various characters and discover some very interesting truths that I obviously won't spoil here for you. Now, you will get to explore various levels. Some are a bit more open than others, not necessarily a full open world, but some very large open areas that you can explore. And yes, the environments here are not pretty by any means. They are not pretty to look at, given this global, basically, apocalypse that happened in the game. Environments are damaged or destroyed. The areas are very barren and lifeless. Not many NPCs or life running around the environments. But visually, this is one of the better looking games of the current generation. Not the best looking game currently, but one of the better ones nonetheless. And throughout these levels, you can explore and find a lot, and I mean a lot, of secrets and collectibles. So if you are a completionist, you do have a lot of work lined up for you. I currently have about 50 or so hours put into the game. Now, do keep in mind, minor spoiler, there is a part of the game that will lock you out of exploring the areas and completing your various side quests and finding the collectibles. So do be mindful that when you reach that point of the game, there's no turning back. So make sure you finish everything you can before proceeding to that part of the game.
Wow. What a view.
I wonder what it looked like before the war.
Now, combat here is pretty fascinating, and I didn't realize until maybe around 40 hours or so that you don't really get any new weapon in the game, with the exception of your drone becoming your ranged combat weapon, your gun, so to speak. This is not like a Devil May Cry or a Ninja Gaiden, where you're not going to find various weapons with its own strengths and weaknesses. There's no heavy weapon with massive damage and really slow speed, or no fast and swift weapon with low damage, etc. It's just your one sword and your drone gun, which of course you can upgrade throughout the game based on various collectibles that you find. Now, this would suck if combat was lackluster, bland, and very limited, but thankfully the combat does have a lot of variety in its combos and special moves, as well as some awesome abilities like performing a perfect dodge or perfect parry to then follow up with some really awesome badass techniques. The game does have some challenging enemies, and at one point you will see quite a bit of a massive difficulty spike that makes the game more challenging, but sometimes a bit unfair and maybe even cheap. And some boss fights, for example, were a bit too challenging for close range combat, but using my various ammos for my drone and keeping my distance did make the combat of those boss fights a bit easier. Now, I personally would have preferred something similar to Devil May Cry, where you switch between your range and your close range weapons for your various moves and tricks and combos, but this is not Devil May Cry, so you kind of have to go with what they have here and really go with what works best for you. If you're good with close range, cool. If you have to take your distance and use the range combat, it's there for a reason. Now, when it comes to characters in the game, I have heard the argument that Eve is a bit of a dull personality and doesn't really have personality or emotions at all, but then you have a game like Rise of the Ronin, where you have a mostly silent protagonist who lacks any real emotion or personality, and I guess that can be expected for an RPG in Rise of the Ronin's case, but Eve is a fucking android from space. Excuse me, but I can understand her lack of personality or emotion, even though she does share some emotions, or at the very least, an understanding of emotions.
Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, I think.
Oh, no. Please, go on.
Now, I also wonder where the inspiration came from the minor biblical elements. I mean, your main protagonist and her primary companion are literally named Adam and Eve. I do see where some of the inspiration came from Nier Automata, one of my all-time favorite games, and yes, Nier does some of the elements better compared to what they do here. But there is still something very solid here.
Adam, I was very surprised when I first met you.
What?
Back in the colony, we learned that everyone on Earth was completely wiped out.
I'm sure it must have seemed that way. But you can't expect Mother Sphere to know everything.
Then there are other survivors out there, like you.
Yes, but it's rare to see them. Earth is still pretty inhospitable to humans.
Other characters that you get to meet in the game and interact with, they may be either bland or super annoying, but the game does put more focus on combat and exploration, combat more so than the exploration. And there is also a pretty interesting story here, but I do wish there was a bit more to the story and if it was a bit less predictable. Now, of course, I won't spoil anything here for you. Now, while I do wish for more weapons to unlock that will fit your personality or your preferred playstyle, or, more environments with more life added to it than what we are given here, this is still an amazingly fun action-adventure game with some amazing, visuals, and yeah, the dialogue and voice acting could use some work, but there is so much good and fun in this game that I cannot wait to see what happens next, whether it's a sequel or DLC. I am here for it. Also, at the time of this review, there has been a couple of updates containing a new Game Plus mode, which unlocks a new difficulty mode, as well as some new outfits for Eve. And there's also an update that gives you a couple more outfits for free and some more outfits you can purchase, as well as a boss rush mode that, of course, completing that will get you another outfit for Eve as well. So I am hopeful that there will be more to this game, whether it's new DLC, whether it's free or paid, or even a sequel in the next 3 to 5 years or so, give or take. But my ultimate, honest, final opinion on the game is this is a game that is a must buy, in my opinion. If you love action adventure, if you love fast and detailed combat, if you love sci-fi, or I have to say, unfortunately, if you love the jiggly things in the game, then if you have a PlayStation 5, you must buy this game and play it. As for everyone else who doesn't have a PlayStation 5, I do apologize, but maybe they'll do a PC port in about 2 years or so. But that is my review of Stellar Blade for the PlayStation 5. Let me know in the comments what you think about this game. Let me know what you are enjoying about the game or don't enjoy. And what are some things you are waiting for from Sony in the near future? Spider-Man DLC, Wolverine. Let me know in the comments. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.